development for the Salvation Army here in Omaha, where I serve the Western Division. The purpose of this video, which should only last about 7 minutes, is really intended to help you with your DJ's Hero applications so that your nominee has a much better chance this year of rising to the top and possibly being awarded a $10,000 scholarship. And again, I assure you this is very brief. It's intended to be brief. We aren't having a 30-minute seminar. We're having a quick 7-minute video. I want to begin, first of all, it's so important for you to know exactly why you have this opportunity to submit an application for a $10,000 scholarship. In 1999, a young man by the name of DJ Sokol, he was the 18-year-old son of David and Peggy Sokol, passed away at a far too early age of 18 from Hodgkin's disease. DJ played football and basketball at Elkhorn Mount Michael High School in Elkhorn, Nebraska, and he became just an outstanding class leader even after he was diagnosed in 1997 with Hodgkin's disease. And he lived a very heroic final 2+ years of his life. And again, that's so important to know that even after he was diagnosed and went through so many struggles, he continued to talk about cancer. He would speak about that at fundraisers, and he raised money for cancer, and he was a true hero in everything that he did the final couple of years of his life. DJ went through months of chemotherapy and radiation and even had a stem cell transplant, if you can imagine that. Yet DJ always remained positive right up until the final day of his life in 1999. Mr. and Mrs. Sokol, David and Peggy Sokol, DJ's parents, said at the time of his death that despite 2 crushing setbacks in his recovery, DJ never lost his positive attitude. And therefore the Sokols decided that they really wanted to honor DJ's life. So they worked very closely back in about 20 years ago, 18 to 20 years ago, with the Salvation Army, and they set up DJ's Hero Awards Luncheon, which has presented scholarships now to dozens of individuals over the years. And they want to recognize young men and women from all walks of life who truly, truly are heroes in their communities and in their schools and in the state of Nebraska. Now, with the Sokol's generous financial support and that of so many other people from Omaha and from around the state of Nebraska, dozens of seniors in high school have battled heroically and received scholarships in recent years. I want to share with you that my wife and I are pretty normal people. We're the parents of 2 very healthy children. They're now grown. We also have a grandson now. But back in the days when they were going to high school, the same age as DJ, they battled their share of challenges. They had broken bones in sports. That happened more than once. They dealt with academic challenges where they really had to work very hard and maybe didn't get as good a grade as they deserved, but they overcame that and went on to be very successful today. And they did other things related to the setbacks that teenagers typically do in most normal circumstances. And yet, as parents, we can't even begin to imagine the type of a challenge that DJ overcame and the type of challenges that these other young heroes have overcome in their lives. And I just want to share a couple of examples with you that we want you to look at very closely, not like my children's broken bones and minor setbacks. These are the type of things that we're looking for in the nominations. First of all, there was a young lady last year whose parents, believe it or not, were killed in a civil war in Burma. They immigrated to America, and this young lady, despite language barriers and everything else that you have to deal with when you come to a new country, went on to thrive in high school. She's now attending college and has overcome all of these incredible obstacles. Another young lady who's a Mexican immigrant who, although she was dealing with terrible cases of depression, has found her niche in music, and she's sung in many places, including at many athletic events where she sings the national anthem. Much brighter outlook on life, and she's determined to make her life successful. And then a young man from Greater Nebraska who it's unimaginable what this young man overcame who was recipient last year. He was a victim of severe abuse, neglect, and near starvation, if you can imagine that. But he overcame that with some help, obviously, of some adults in his life. and he's now a very strong leader in his community. He was in his school, and now he's attending college. So these are the type of stories that are really important for you to know about each year. And you need to know that we receive close to 200 applications each year. And when the selection committee gets together, we can only really look at about 20% of these and give them serious consideration. Stories like I just shared with you rise to the top. Not always that dramatic, so if your story isn't quite that dramatic, please don't believe that you can't submit an application, but I think you get the idea. There has to be something more than a sprained ankle or a broken bone like my children experienced back in high school. The purpose of this video, very quickly now, the final couple of minutes here, is really threefold. We want to ask you to identify teenage heroes who truly have overcome major obstacles in their life, the type that most of us can't even imagine. So that's the number one reason we're doing this. Secondly, we want you to read a best practice example application that you can find on our website at salarmyomaha.org. You'll find it. It's easy to find. And it really gives you some tips and ideas for what makes a powerful application. Review that very closely and notice how well they're written. You're critically important to the success of the application. The judges view them very closely, review them very closely, and how you tell the story is incredibly important. Thirdly, and finally, please work closely with the nominee to make certain that their 250-word essay is well written. It doesn't have to be perfect like an author would submit it, but it should tell the story very well, very articulately. Grammar and punctuation do make a difference when the judges are looking at these, and yet we want them to tell the story from the heart. We also will provide you with that sample essay on our website for your review. And finally, we also want to talk very briefly about best practices for submission. There are 5 of them. Quickly use specific examples. We've talked about that, the nominee taking on leadership roles in their schools and communities. Talk about specific life-altering circumstances and obstacles that your nominee has overcome. Again, overcoming obstacles is important. Provide detailed description of how the nominee shows maturity and enthusiasm. Maturity and enthusiasm despite all these obstacles in their teenage years, just as DJ did during his heroic battle. And then describe community service roles that your nominee fulfills and how he or she has concern for others. And number 5, tell about the nominee's educational and career goals. We know that they overcome obstacles to get here. The judges love to hear what type of a future they have in store for them. That doesn't mean they need to be doctors and lawyers and world-renowned. It means that they would have a solid career path in mind that could even include the trades. It could include so many things, but be very clear about that. Those of us who work here at the Salvation Army are really blessed beyond measure to be able to get to know more about the heroes that live in your community. And we want you to know how much we appreciate you submitting these applications, and we want you to know how meaningful that is when the judges sit down to be able to award usually from 7 to 10 of these scholarships every year, depending on how the fundraising goes behind it. These people are dealing with unimaginable challenges in their life, and through your help and through our help, and through Mr. Sokol's help and all of the other, Mr. and Mrs. Sokol's help and all of the other donors, hopefully they'll live a better life. So thank you for putting a little bit extra effort into it this year. Make sure that you contact our office if you have any questions, and hopefully we'll see your nominee at this year's awards luncheon.